So, I told you that I would give you kind of a tutorial on how to draw. So, I am going to go ahead and show you exactly that. I think I'm going to break my process up into a couple different, files so I can explain to you. But, essentially, what I usually start off with whenever I am sketching stuff is, or whenever I want to draw, is a circle. Because you can build about any face off of this. We're going to start with headshots, or, the whole upper body. So I'm just going to, draw one of my personas or something. So you do this, and to make things a little bit easier on yourself, that is your eyebrow. That is the eyeline, the beginning eyeline, the end of your eyeline, nose, mouth, chin. So, we have all of these. You gotta remember which lines you choose for things, but obviously, for this one you connect, for your eyeline you go in a little bit, because eye ridges. And then I also try to measure out where, like, the eyebrows and stuff would be. So obviously one would be right there, and one would be right there. And obviously don't make them the same size, because perspective, unless they're facing directly forward, it's not needed and usually looks kind of funky. So now that I've got my eyebrows down, a line right here, and since I am drawing a cat, go out like that, put the nose in, mouth, and with this, usually the muzzle ends up looking kind of weird in the first couple of passes. This is okay, obviously, but like, it takes some time to learn how to do. And now, just add the other cheek. And there you go, there's a face. Notice how I left a bit of the head. This is because, obviously, your head is not perfectly just a circle. There is a cranium. Gotta have enough to put, like, a brain in there. So, yeah. Make sure to leave about that much left just so you can fit your brain in there. I'm gonna do a little bit of tweaking with this nose and stuff, and also erase my guidelines in places I do not need them anymore. And I do not like the shape of this, so I'm going to go back, refine the separation between the nose and the fur, perspective lines back in, nose, and usually to get good mouths, pretty much do what you would see on an animal. So line down the center, circle, perfect little smile, just kind of like build with 3 circles, imagine 3 circles being there, and usually that makes a pretty good muzzle. Getting rid of these arrows. So now the eye line should be left. Usually for the eye lines, I kind of sketch the whole eye, not my no expression added yet, just to kind of get the shape down. And you don't have to clean up your sketches at all, it's just something I do to keep myself, keeping the vision cohesive. Add some eyelids, that's for if fully open, if I wanted to make him relaxed, which I think I'm going to probably just draw Ken in here, so. And now you've got perfectly good eyelids right there. I usually kind of refine them with eraser. And there you go. You can add eye bags, eyelashes, whatever you so desire. I usually go ahead and add pupils or irises in ahead of time, and since this is my guy, he is missing one crucial aspect. But obviously, you know, if your persona or whatever doesn't have this little, like, doodad thing, that's alright too. That's just particular to my persona. So, now that we've got this head down, it is now time to add the ears and the cheek fluffs. I'm gonna go ahead and do the cheek fluff. This is just kind of however you can not add it, you can add it. I tend to put it on my characters because I think it's cute. On Kitten specifically, it kind of looks like sideburns, so I keep it. And then there you go. There's your little cheek fluff. I also forgot that my guy has this little like mustache thing, so go ahead and add it. You don't have to if you're not drawing this specific character or don't have a character that has like a weird snail mustache like mine does. But yeah. If you're following along with this tutorial, it would be nice to see the results, so make sure to show me. But for the ears, I tend to just go triangles. So kind of think of them, this is like your temples of your head. This would be your hairline. The ears would go in the temples area. And you can make them as big and as small as you want. Depends on the creature that you're working with. My guy is a cat, but I tend to draw cat ears a bit bigger than natural cat ears, so it is truly just up to you and your own style. And now, ear fluff, just to kind of make it a little better. I usually tend to do these little, like, 2 peaks. Looks okay. Not offensive, not too fluffy. And then there's your cat head. This is no hair added. So I'm going to talk a brief moment about layers and what layers can do for your sketches, because sometimes, like, you know, you start a sketch and you don't want to like fuck it up. Well, add another layer. You can always merge these into the same layer later and just keep working. So in this case, I like his head. I don't want to fuck up his head by obscuring it with hair, and if I don't like the hair lines that I've put down and stuff, I can easily just erase this layer. Most hair, you just need to stay loose with your wrist movements. If you are feeling extremely tense while doing this, hair tends to come out very stiff, lifelike, I would say. So, just remember to keep yourself very loose and limber during hair drawing, no matter if it's, you know, furry related or not. And since my character has, you know, this weird e-boy mullet haircut going on, you know, there's that. And then now, since we're on a different layer, I can just erase these without worrying about the lines that I just put down. And there you go. Pretty smooth looking sketch. My character has antenna, so obviously I'm going to slap those down. And there you go. Obviously the 2-layer method isn't a requirement by any means. It's just for the, I will say, quote-unquote, lazier of us who don't want to specifically like sit there and erase. It's a big time saver is what I would call it. There's your sketch. Nothing to it really. Just one simple headshot. Now if you wanted to add a neck here, I'm going to add an extra layer. Just, you know, in case it messes up. And I'm just going to sketch kind of what angle I think the neck would come in at. And then some shoulders. And then there you go. It's amazing what a few simple lines can do to build a body. You just drew a furry. Welcome back. I missed you, or whatever. Continuing on. So, here's where I'm going to talk about line art. There are plenty of things you can, brushes and stuff that you can use for line art. You can keep using the pencil tool, You can change to the rougher pencil tool. There's a G pen that most people use. There's smooth and soft versions of pens, at least in my program. Let me try to find the specialty ones. There's this one I use that has color jitter. It also has some extra texture in it. There's flat brushes, acrylics, like all these different ones, even specialty ones like star glitter, like that. Now, with the particular brush I use, it just so happens to be a PNG file of Terezi Pyro from Homestuck without her glasses on. You don't have to make a brush exactly like this, but this is my preferred brush. It's what I use for line art, painting, everything under the sun. These are the settings if you would like the same brush, and obviously I didn't even change it from the PNG file, but go ahead and pause the video if you would like to replicate these settings. On to line art. So for me, I tend to like this, obviously I like this angle brush, so I add another layer. I make my sketch layer a lot more transparent. I set my brush to 16, and I start with the eyes. Eyes are the window of the soul, so getting them correct is usually the way to go. And you can do these however you want. There's no proper way to draw an eye shape. And get funky with your eye shapes, if I'm being honest. I personally like seeing artwork with cool looking eyes. See, and now we have the eyes. And for most color projects I do not draw the actual iris part, but I do sketch in the pupil. Put on your eyebrows. If you did not fix your nose in the sketch process, now is your time to fix whatever is going on with your nose. Just make sure to kind of differentiate the nose and the muzzle a little bit. Make sure it's visually obvious that, this is the nose. And I tend to not actually put that little line there, so I just kind of follow where my sketch ends off. Taper the mouth a little bit. Pen pressure is also very important whenever doing line art. Obviously, if I had no pen pressure or no angle, this would look a lot different. So just keep in mind with how much pressure you're drawing with when using certain brushes, especially transparency ones that rely on pressure to be transparent or non-transparent, like the sketch brushes. So if you use those for line art, if you press harder all of the time, they will be more opaque. Just, your pen may not like you. That's one part of the face done. I tend to actually put different parts of the piece on different layers, so I would have put the eyes and the eyebrows on a different layer than the actual body, but for demonstration purposes, we're just going to be doing this, and then I'll put the hair on a different layer. If you did a perfect sketch, you can just go over it. There is no shame in just going over the perfect sketch. And another thing with line art is you need to be very confident with your strokes, or it will be obvious. If you're sketching things, like if you have a very sketchy, like that art style, like, see, that looks noticeably different than these confident strokes right here. It is okay to rely on the sketchy brush strokes and stuff when you're beginning, and it is perfectly okay for that. If that's part of your style, that's no big deal. But personally for me, with my experience and my art that I do, it just doesn't look as good. And just make sure to place things where you think that they need to go. So whatever you think looks the best, do it. Get funky with it. I'm just showing you the basics. And I will also put these piercings on a different layer, since I'll kind of explain why I do the multi-layer thing here. Just always remember perspective when doing these ears, because if not, they will look a little wonky. And now, if you're going to do what I'm doing, switch to a different layer to do the hair, but do not merge it after you are finished, like you did with the sketch layer. And remember, with the hair, continue to stay very loose with your movements. If they are stiff, it is very noticeable. You want your hair to be flowy, like it is in real life, even if it is stylized. Hair that defies gravity is pretty cool, still, and obviously it does exist in real life with the advent of hairspray and Got2b glued. When you are drawing characters with like flatter hair and stuff, obviously it looks a little bit better for them to have flowy, natural looking hair. I'm switching layers again, like add a new one for the shirt, which is just going to be a couple of lines. I tend to add these, I wouldn't call them perforated, but whatever the hell these colors are called, you know, extra division to show that, hey, this is a shirt. Kind of thin out the lines a little. I'll actually, also, since the shirt and the piercings will most likely be the same color, do that. And obviously, I just shortcut my piercings and stuff, so this is up to you on whether or not you want to full-fledgedly draw rings or not. With me, I do not. So, as you have noticed, with this piece, there's quite a lot of overlap with the lines. That is kind of part of the layer thing. When you have separate layers like this, all you have to do now, instead of, you know, having to avoid your hairlines, all you have to do is erase the extra. And obviously this method probably won't work for everyone, but it is the one that works best for me. Now I can switch to the hair layer, clean up any of the hairlines that just so happen to be in the wrong areas, and now I can switch to the shirt, the piercings, but obviously everything is fine. And there you go, there's all your lines. You can erase your sketch layer, and it will look a little bit funky until you color it, obviously. That's how it goes. So I will see you in the coloring. Alright, now we are on to coloring. If you don't like to see all these layers or get confused, I would suggest making a folder, if you can, in your program, and putting all your line art layers in one. And for me, because I don't like the number of my layers being huge and stuff, I'm going to just erase layer 1. And this is where, if you had a reference sheet, bring it in. Copy paste it into your program, put it into a different window. If you have a reference for a character or just color picking, I would add it now. So for me, I have a specific reference that I have to use. And now that I have my reference in, I can now color pick. I will say, when you are designing OCs, and, you know, if you're just picking colors willy-nilly, I would say, and I would suggest actually, before putting them down on your character, color pick first. So if I wanted a red lighting OC, I would not oversaturated red, but red, take this black, kind of bring it up a little bit to the red area, more black, and I can just work from there. And then now you have a color palette to work from. When designing OCs, keep in mind that colors that look good together are usually complementary. Blue and orange, or blue and yellow, tend to look pretty good together. Maybe not these exact shades, but yeah, just a little tip on color. So for my OC, I have a specific amount of colors that I need to use, or not specific amount of colors, but I have specific colors that I need to use. I will just put them out here so I don't have to constantly reference the reference. See, and now I don't even have to open this reference panel anymore, unless I need to know where something color-wise needs to go. To make this a little bit easier on myself as well, I tend to put down a color layer enveloping this. We're going to go ahead and do some selection magic, magic wand tool, lasso, Make sure to select everything outside of your line art, make sure there's no gaps or holes, and now we're going to inverse it and contract it by 1, 2, I would not go over 3, but 1 tends to work for me. And now, I take the opposite color of what I am going to most likely be using in my palette, place it down, and now you have something to kind of keep you in the lines as well as have a shading layer for later if you wish to do it that way. But yeah, now I have these things done, and now if I color, it won't go outside of the lines. And that's perfect, and it's a time saver. I'm just going to go ahead and color this guy in, and I'll be back to talk about protect alpha layers. Now that he is all colored in, make double sure that everything is opaque. Now I'm going to talk about protect alpha layers. If you don't have a protect alpha layer on and you need to do a lot of blending, then the colors will bleed. If you don't have a character that requires a lot of blending, or if you don't have a character that you don't want to put every color on the same layer, you can skip ahead in this video if you want. With my character, right here in particular, there's a lot of blending that needs to be done. So I take my brush that I was telling you about in the brush section of the line art video, which happens to be a watercolor blending brush as well as a line art and pretty much everything brush, and I'm going to select this protect alpha. Now that I've selected it, anything that I draw will only be on there, but if I don't, then it'll be off. This kind of helps with artists like me who are a little bit lazy and don't want to have to erase everything. Now I'm just going to pretty much blend away. Before I get into the time lapse actually of me just blending everything, make sure that your complement level is set to a lower thing if you're blending. Complement 100 is just usually what I use for when laying down like strict blocks of color. So just be sure if you're blending like I am to set it to a lower complement. So, now that the blending is done, you may notice, hey, what about all the color that, like, you laid down that's not supposed to be there? Well, add another layer, baby. That's really all you gotta do. Now I'm going to do the eyes. I tend to also protect alpha the eyes and add the eyes and the nose on the same layer due to the way that I shade both of them. Eyes and noses tend to be a lot more shinier than fur and skin, usually, depending on, you know, the animal or type of thing you're drawing. So I tend to put them on the same layer. And if you notice there, that is the 30 complement, and that is the 100 complement. Still blends, just add a very stronger color instead of taking from the base color. And there you go. Color the nose in there as well. Now, pretty much everything goes as follows. I don't have to really explain a whole lot other than, you know, obviously remember which lines go to which item on the body. And yeah, that's all I got. So now you get to just watch me color the rest of it. Now, everything is colored. You should have everything on a separate coloring layer unless you have blending layers or did everything on one layer. I am impressed you did that. If you have a want for color in the line art, which you should not keep it just black. Pure black line art always looks not great. What I tend to do is, let's get this deselection. We have the skin layer. Skin, in this case, is blue. So I take the darkest shade of blue that I have on the canvas at the moment, do that, clipping layer, and I turn it down just enough to where there's still black. I don't want everything to be this weird blue color. I want the nose to still pop out. Pick the nose color, and you color it as well. And you just keep repeating the process until everything you want to be a different color is a different color. And it looks like everything that I wanted in this image is a different color. So now I can merge it, and wow! What I guess I didn't explain was what you just saw was a clipping layer on top of the colored layer to make it the color as the clipping layer. I guess I could show it in the hair. So I take this layer 10 right here, I click clipping. Now without it, this would just be a blob, but with it, it covers the layer underneath, a clipping. Now you just adjust your hair to whatever color you want it to be. And I want this to remain a shade of black, but not this shade of black, because this is pure black. And as I just discussed, pure black does not always look the best. So turn down this blue as much as I possibly can. And then there you go. You've now completed the color section. Alright, now I'll show you the shading process. You should have everything on their separate layers over here. And what I like to do is go layer by layer and work on each and every shade. Now, usually I will stick within one color for the entire piece, so it's universal shading. You don't have to do this, but the way that I do this is I take the layer I have, make a new one, clipping, and then I pick either multiply or burn. In this case, I think I'm going to go to multiply, and if I move it down to the bottom layer here, I can now test out the colors with the multiply function. So if you want to just troubleshoot before you put down a certain shade color, you want to switch to see if burn looks better, stuff like that. But I think what we're going to go with today is a vibrant purple for the shading. Now, I don't know if I want to keep this multiply. I think I will. Now, you have kind of a vague idea of what the colors are going to look like when laid down. So just do areas where you think that the light source is not hitting. In this case, for demonstration purposes, this up here is our light source. So anything that is kind of like below this needs to be shaded. So obviously, like, light would not be hitting underneath the chin here, light would not hit here, so on and so forth. Now, I do like to keep a little bit of gaps in between certain parts of, like, the face and stuff to signify that it is on top of the thing that is being shaded. So, like, for instance, right here, coloring that in, siding, I don't really like that bit, but this bottom half has to be shaded. Shade that, kind of shade underneath the eyebrows, because light is not hitting right there. The eyebrow ridge is overhanging. And just kind of feel out where you think needs shaded in accordance to your light source. Do not be afraid to get a little bit much with your shading. It looks not as bad as you think it does, believe it or not. So like these big blocks here, and if you want to go back in with an eraser and kind of carve out a certain shape, you can do that. You basically already have this first layer, first bit of color shaded. Things like the ears, the inner ears would be darker. This is behind that. It needs to kind of reflect that. And then there you go. Now obviously I need to shade the rest of the piece, so do what on the layer styles feels right. You could switch it to burn. Obviously it has no huge effect here, but on some color in your, like on your burn layer, it can make a load of difference to switch it to burn versus multiply. Just whatever you feel is best in this situation. For me, multiply on a 32% should be fine. Like I said, I shade wet things, I guess you could consider them, a little bit more differently than I do fur and skin. It's obviously, like, the shading part is not as noticeable, it's more on the highlights. So here, just checking out if burn looks better, and obviously burn looks better here, so turn it down, and there you go. Here, make sure your clipping layer is always on when doing this, because you can forget, and some layer styles, when this is turned on, will just completely disappear from the background, though they are still there. Now, everyone shades their hair differently, but obviously, in this case, for this particular character, this has to always be shaded, because it's almost never facing the light. What I like to do is a zigzag kind of pattern style. Obviously, shine is not linear, it doesn't just show up in lines, so it's good to have variation. So right here, I'm just popping in some shading zigzags. I don't bring my shading all the way to the lines, because this piece of hair is on top of something. And just fill in your zigzags as you think is appropriate. You can always go back and with the eraser later, fix up any particular spots that you think need fixing. So just repeat the process as you go along with your hair. Obviously, you do not have to shade your hair this way, this is just the way that I do it. Take inspiration from others when you need to, but don't rely on it. And now I'm just placing down where some shading can go, where kind of that part is, keeping in mind of your light source as you go on doing this. Shading usually works best with cooler colors, like cool spectrum colors, but don't be afraid to experiment with warm colors or stuff like that when you're doing this. Different colors can set different tones for pieces, so do what you think relies best on the tone you'd like to put out for your piece. And now it's time to shade the shirt. Simple as that. Again, don't be afraid to block colors in when you're doing it like this. Now on to highlights. Now since I picked a cool, almost purple color, I need to pick the exact opposite of this color. So I need to go to my warms, and I think because it was more blue, it would be a more bold yellow for my highlights. So now we just essentially go in. Don't be afraid to add highlights where necessary. Remember to keep in mind of your light source so everything looks cohesive. And yeah. And remember, any lines you put down that you don't want there anymore can easily just be erased. Now, I usually choose from add, dodge, screen, sometimes overlay, depending on the color that I'm using. You can experiment around with these, but for this purpose, I'm going to go with add, turn it down to 22%, and looky there. Well, actually 16%, and looky there. Everything looks somewhat properly shaded, on the face region anyway. Go in here and tweak a little bit, and there you go. Repeat. Do what you think is necessary. Like I said, I was going to shade these a little bit wetter. A lot of that is in the highlights. For my eyes, I just like to do these little circles down here. For shiny things, I tend to like to use the add on somewhat high opacity. So 41, and then if you wish, you can go back in, kind of add some extra highlights if you think it needs more shine to it. In my case, I'm kind of going back in, adding some extra stuff. And again, just repeat the process as you need. You can always go into these layers as well, your base color layers, protect alpha, and clean up any areas that you think, needed cleaned up, like this. Or you can blend things that you just laid down. And it's okay if you lose your color. Sometimes, if you don't have the exact color match with the highlights, it's okay. The add function sometimes renders the color useless and just turns it white. Do keep in mind you don't have to exact color match, but if you want a cohesive piece, it's highly suggested. Now with this, I'm going to kind of follow that zigzag pattern that I laid down. It's okay if this overlaps some of the shading, because when it's turned down a bit with the opacity, it looks a lot better. Highlight what you think that the light touches, In this case, it would be the top of the hair here. And right here. And on these back bits where light should travel. And now you can decrease the opacity, adjust things how you want, yada yada. You know how this works at this point. Only thing we have left to highlight or shade or anything like that is our shirt, which I will keep at a lower shininess, because obviously it's fabric. So I'll just go with a dodge. Since it's a darker color, we make that just visible enough to tell that it's a different color. Now, since I'm not going to do global shading, I'm going to get rid of this layer right here, because if I wanted to, I could put this on top, erase parts that I want affected by the light, and boom, you have full shading. But since I don't want that, I will simply merge everything together. Just make sure everything's correct. The lines before merging those. You don't have to merge the lines and the flats if you don't want to at this point, but I do. And now for the extra layers. This isn't required, this is just something I do. In this case, I would like a couple of flowers around this guy. I'll take just one of my specialty brushes and start doing this. And obviously you can use your select tools, move things around. You don't like the position of one of the flowers being where it is, you can simply move it right here. Like, nothing is concrete. You can manipulate anything on its own canvas as long as it's on its own separate layer. Except for in this case, which obviously individual selection doesn't affect the fact that it's on the same layer. And let's just say that I don't like the color these flowers are. We're gonna clip and layer them. Pick the color I think I would like, which I think this yellow looks fantastic. And kind of adjust it how much variation you want in it. And then there you go. Kind of play around. Do you want it to be standout effect? Do you want it to be something that overlays everything? I think I am going to pick dodge. Kind of turn them down just a little. Since I want some extra highlights in here, in the eyes and such, I will just down on their own separate layer. Kind of get some extra shines in here. White highlights wherever you wish. Do not go crazy with these, as pure white will kind of make the piece seem a little unnatural, but for catch lights, it's fantastic. Use whatever shape you want for catch lights. For me, I kind of like these weird isosceles triangles things. And then just highlight whatever you think needs highlighted. And since your layer for drawing these whites is on top of everything, it will obviously draw everything, so you have to be very careful with the line art that's underneath. Granted, when you turn this layer off, it doesn't matter, but you can't necessarily turn it off when you have a raster PNG image. Just keep that in mind. It's gonna add some extra highlights, even though you can't really see them, to the hair. Full complete piece. All you gotta do is sign it now. So, thank you for watching this. Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, show off my process. That's all.